Welcome back to All the Cars I've Loved Before, the podcast where we park the specs at the door to focus on your stories told through the rearview mirror of your past cars. It's time to get a little grease under your nails and step back into the first memories that make us smile. That sense of pure freedom, windows down, music pegged, and your best friends piled in the back. Every car reveals exactly who we are. We're driving into that personal history behind the metal, so let's get into it. I'm your co-host, Doug here. I'm driving solo today, and we've got a great show for you. I'm going to give you an update on the podcast. I am just coming back from a couple laps at Summit Point Race Park or Summit Point Speedway from a Miata, and I did this all courtesy of P1 Sim Racing and Driver Development in Annapolis, Maryland. If you haven't tried sim racing and live in the DMV, this is the place to go. I find it helps me focus before doing a podcast recording, and I just beat my personal best lap time, and I got a little personal instruction from one of the owners, Tommy. Their website is drivep1.com. And our podcast continues to grow, and we'd like to hear your stories and recommendations. Visit our link tree, linktr.ee/carslove, and use that to connect with us or email us, stories@carslove.com. Here's a recent review. This is from George P., who enjoyed our Season 1, Episode 4 episode titled From a 1987 Corolla to Track-Ready Infinity, Banging Gears the Wrong Way. George says, Adam's episode was my favorite, mostly because I know him, and of course, because he is Adam. Well, thank you, George. Glad you enjoyed that episode. It's one of my favorites. And if you're enjoying the show, the best way to support us is leave us a quick review on Apple Podcasts or share this episode with a friend who still misses their first ride. Our guest and I have crossed paths many times virtually, mostly because I'm a huge fan of the podcast network that he co-founded. But these days, I'm delighted to see his colleagues post about the latest technology on LinkedIn, which is how I was able to get him to volunteer to be our special guest today. Without further ado, we are thrilled to welcome Ethan Banks to our virtual garage. He's based out of New Hampshire, and he is the co-founder of the incredible Packet Pushers podcast network, a veteran IT practitioner who has spent 2 decades or more designing large enterprise networks, data centers, and global WANs. He is a technical powerhouse, earning the coveted CCIE. He also co-authored the book, Computer Networking Problems and Solutions, and he co-hosts the flagship show, Heavy Networking, and one I really love, N is for Networking. But what truly sets Ethan apart is his dedication to giving engineers a voice and educating the IT community. Welcome to the podcast, Ethan.
Like that sounded like a commercial for Incogni or Delete Me, because if you found all that online about me, I got to do better about my online persona.
Yeah.
Way too much information out there about me. My word.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, maybe you should sign up for Delete Me. It'll take a few months for it to all disappear.
I know all that's out there. That's just part
Yeah.
of the part and parcel of being a public figure.
We're lucky to have you because you're not only a car enthusiast, you are our first guest who also runs a podcast. So that is very unique. So glad you're with us. And I did want to ask you, when was the last time someone asked you about your first car, Ethan?
Oh man, it might be you because it's just not a conversation I get into all that often, and it's kind of fun to get on and talk about something that's still nerdy and techie, but isn't computers or networks or packets. Cars are amazing.
Agreed. So, as a fellow network guy, I'm with you. And I have to say, when people ask me what I do, I don't go into networking anymore. I say, yeah, I'm a podcast host. What podcast? Oh, we talk about our first cars. And then they start smiling. And you see them look up and think about their first car. And in our pre-show, that's what we were doing. And so happy to have you.
So my first car, and I'm going off memory here, so if I dug into the records, maybe I'd come up with some minor differences. But it was an 86 Honda Accord, 2-door hatchback. And I bought that my wife and I were first married, and we needed a car, and that's what we could afford. We went to a dealer that was nearby where we lived. It was on the lot. And all the new cars were like way out of reach for young newlyweds. But there was that car. I'm like, well, let's look at this thing. Took it for a ride. It was a standard, and we could afford it. It cleaned me out. It was like everything I had in my savings account. What we put it down, financed the rest. As I remember, like $2,000 down and $4,000 financed got us this this 86 Honda Accord. White, I kind of remember a red pinstripe, and it was a blue cloth interior. And we had no kids, so two-door was fine. And it was a standard. That was fine. I don't remember being super good at driving a standard, but growing up, I'd had enough exposure to them with cars that my dad had driven over the years, and I had my shot at that I kind of knew what was going on. And we got it done. So that was car number one.
Wow. So was this back in high school?
This was first married. So this was, I was 21. I mean,
Wow.
I'd driven other cars, but I had not owned a car. This was the
You
first car that I owned
Mhm.
and bought with my own money. I mean,
Oh,
so I mean, if you want to go back to first car I ever drove, we can have that conversation too.
yeah. Well, why don't we hold that? Because I do want to hear about that. But I also want to introduce today's trivia question, which is
Oh,
technology related and automotive related. And we're going to, even if you know the answer, we'll save it for the end. But which common automotive technology found in almost every car today, I would say car 100%, maybe not that 86 Accord, was invented by a man who was completely blind? This one surprised me. So, because
interesting.
a blind man inventing something for a car, right, is surprising. You would
Mhm.
think maybe a horn, but we're going to save that to the end. But
Okay.
I would love to hear about your first driving experience
Boy,
pre-marriage, pre-college.
so there, I mean, I got a bunch of interesting, little stories because I
Mhm.
loved cars. As a little kid, I loved cars. I collected Matchbox cars, and I'd buy them with allowance money, or maybe my dad would pick one up for me. So this is me as a little kid collecting Matchbox cars. Many of which I still have. I still have the Matchbox had their collector showcase. It was a brown wall mountable little like grid that you could put cars into these individual cells and show off your Matchbox collection. There was a Matchbox magazine, like a newsletter thing they'd put out,
Oh,
and
wow.
kids that had collected tons and tons of cars, they'd have pictures of them in the Matchbox magazine. And I remember this one kid was showing off his collection of like 900 and something cars with a custom mounted wall display. Anyway, all that to say, I
Mhm.
loved cars growing up. And my dad and I would split the subscription to car magazines. And for a while, we were getting the three big ones: Car and Driver, Road and Track, and Motor Trend. We got all three of them, and I would read them front to back. I would cut pictures out of the magazines as they aged out and make collages to put on my wall in my room, and so on. So I mean, cars like lived in my head. I thought about them all the
Mhm.
time. I'd be in the back behind my dad as a little kid, and we'd pass cars on the interstate, and I'd like count the number of cars we were passing because in my head I was pretending we were in the Indy 500, and I'd start us at the back of the field, and there were 33 cars in the field, and I until we were there in first place. Okay, so long way to
No,
say I grew up loving cars, man. I
well,
really did.
it's funny you mentioned Matchbox, Hot Wheels. Like, because I'm a DeLorean owner, I'm always looking for DeLorean Matchbox or Hot Wheels, and I'll go to the store and, I'm in the toys section, right? And I see a lot of adults in there looking for cars, and they don't have a kid with them. They're like me. They're looking for their fave to add it to their list to kind of relive that. I do have to ask you, since we're in the same age group, did you have the poster justification for higher education
No, I
with the
didn't have that one, but
cars?
I know the one you mean. But it's the
Yeah.
garage with the three cars parked
Yep.
by the beach with the sunset kind of thing is
Yeah.
kinda
And
how I
it's like a
remember it,
six
yeah.
car garage.
Oh, yeah, and they're all these awesome exotics. But the
Yeah.
one I did have was the classic white Lamborghini Countach with the, side
Mhm.
shot with the black background, the beautiful font,
Yeah,
and
with a
that
black
hung up.
background.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah, that hung on my wall for years and years. I had that,
Yeah.
and I had a model of a Ferrari Testarossa in red that
Mhm.
I've had since high school, and it's still kicking around this house somewhere, I think. Yeah, but so not a poster, but that model of, of the car. Come to find out years later, it's like, wow, as a driving experience, maybe the Testarossa wasn't all that,
Yeah.
but it was sure
Well,
beautiful to look at.
do you still have any of the magazines? And there's a leading question with that.
I do not have any of the paper
Okay.
magazines from back in the
Okay.
day, no.
Hopefully this shows up. These are not
Oh,
original.
man. Look at
But I bought these a few years ago. I have more from eBay. I read these specific magazines. I remember reading them. And of course, you can find anything thanks to the internet. We help make the
yeah.
plumbing on that, right? And yeah, these magazines are fantastic.
So you've got
And
are those are the got Miatas on the cover, I think I'm seeing?
on this one, there's a Miata and there's a 300ZX. Miata I've owned. Actually, I just came back from racing a virtual Miata. I've owned 2 of the NA Miatas, and I have a 300ZX in my garage that's about 5 different colors because it kept getting hit on my nearest street, and I need to get it. But this is your show, but I do want to equate we were talking earlier about our early careers in Novell networking. And when I was trying to figure out what to do, I wanted to post high school, graduated in 91. I was screwing around in community college. How am I ever going to afford a 1990 Nissan 300ZX? Well, I looked in the WAN ads, and I was already a computer guy, of course, thanks to my dad. But what am I going to do? Novell NetWare Administrator, $31,000 a year.
Yeah.
I'm going for it. And it took me probably, I don't know, 30 years before I went and got that car. I kind of forgot about it along the way. But one of my best friends had owned one. His family was total car crazy. When I met him, he had a RX-7 Turbo 2. Then he got a Miata, and he was the only child, so he wrecked all of them. His dad bought a 944 Turbo. They bought most cars used. He had this Z. He wrecked it also, but man, I loved that Z, and I still love mine. My dad taught me to drive stick shift, and that was the last car I think my dad ever drove stick shift in. So
my dad had a mix of interesting, like awesome cars and beaters. So because he'd work on his own cars, that he loved cars too, big enthusiast. He had a Taurus SHO, the one with the Yamaha head on it. He had that car. That thing was incredible. What a car! But state would be getting rid of old vehicles, and he'd buy $1,000, $1,200 for an old state police cruiser, and he'd bring it home and put brakes on it and fix it up, whatever it needed, just for cheap mileage to commute in. He was always on a budget. And so I learned how to wrench on cars from my dad. He and I spent, quality time out in the barn working on cars. And living up here in New Hampshire where everything's rusty, you do things, a brake job could take you don't know how long because of rusty bolts. Just trying to get things apart so you could put them together. A simple thing like a brake job could take a long time. So you learn about penetrating oil and how to wait for things to settle in, and then it's still not coming apart. Okay, get out the blowtorch. Let's heat this thing up and see what we can do. And finally get it all apart and get it back together again and make it work. So I learned a lot of stuff from my dad about cars, and not just being an enthusiast, but how to work on them and how to care for them and how listen to the noises they make and the importance of keeping the oil changed and, all those practical things that you got to know as a car owner if you really care.
Yeah, growing up, I was not too mechanically inclined, but my dad made my sister, my brother, and I, we had to know how to change the oil because he was too cheap. He always changed the oil at home. And we had to know how to change a tire, all valuable things.
Yeah.
My own daughter, she got a used CRV. I said, does it have a spare tire? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, do you know how to change? Now her mom got her the car, so it's not my car. But I at least went and bought her one of those, spare tire inflators or inflators. Yeah. Not only the inflator, but the tube of spray, whatever that green stuff is, just in case. Yeah. I know she's not going to know how to change the tire. We didn't have the technology, right? It was up to us to figure it out, and we survived.
Yeah. You mentioned a Miata. You just drove that in a sim, you said, right?
Yes.
So a couple of Miata stories. One, the boring Taurus we were driving got wrecked and we needed another car, my wife and I. And one of the cars I was looking at was a Miata. And I remember my buddy, because we didn't have a car for a moment because that other car had been totaled out. And we stopped and looked at a Miata, got in that thing. I'm sitting in the driver's seat. He's sitting next to me. This is a small car. This is a really small car. And he just looks at me and he goes, you're going to kill yourself in this thing. That was his comment. And I started thinking about that. Like, yeah, he's probably right. So I did not buy a Miata, but I thought about it. Real serious. This would have been, it would have been mid to late 90s. So I don't know how old exactly this Miata was, but it would have been one of the first generations. And that really was a tiny car. But a friend of mine later ended up buying a Miata from that era. This is, fast forward 10, 15 years. He bought a Miata from that era. And I drove him out there to go pick it up and then followed him all the way home back to his house with that car in it. That was fun. I remember he got on a ramp to get on the highway and disappeared. And I'm in a car like this. That was, to be honest, not the fastest car in the world, but I could not keep up with him because the car I was driving, which was an all-wheel drive Subaru, understeered horribly going up the ramp. So I just watched him drive away. That's all I could do to get caught up with him after a little bit and catch up to him. And I'm looking over at him as he's in his new Miata, new old Miata, but with this big old grin on his face. So That's a car I have yet to drive and would like to one of these days.
Yeah, yeah. No, and 35 plus years later, they're still making them. We actually had somebody on from Mazda USA in a past episode. We were talking to, he was involved with the 35th anniversary, the product launch for the Miata in the USA for the 35th anniversary special. So
I love the
there,
look of those new cars, the
yeah,
latest gen Miatas or well,
yeah,
the MX-5. It's just gorgeous
yep,
things, just
yeah.
absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and they have a extremely loyal following, and it's funny, the hardtop on that first gen, I think it fits the second gen, in some cases worth more than the car itself. People want that hardtop. I think for racing, well, little side thing, trying to get in touch with somebody who's got a broken down Miata with a hardtop nearby because I think it needs a fuel pump. Been sitting for years, but that kind of ties into it's sim racing is like the gateway into everything else. And if you ever thought about racing cars, sim racing will make you think really hard about doing it.
I mean, closest I could say is like playing Forza on an Xbox or something.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And actually the owner of, I know we're getting off topic, but the owner of the sim racing place, have you seen that movie Gran Turismo?
Not recently, but yeah, I have.
Yeah,
It came out a few years back, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he was actually not in the first season or first year. He was a finalist in Gran Turismo. He was selected.
Oh,
He went over to England and raced, and unfortunately, or fortunately, his wife got pregnant. He's like, yeah, maybe this isn't the best idea. So he stepped away from that. But he's like the real life Gran Turismo guy. He's like, yeah, movie wasn't quite like that, but I'm like, wow. So you learn to race in a rig at home, and
that's cool. That's
there
really cool.
there are, now that I'm connected with more people in motorsports on LinkedIn. I mean, just a comment the other day about the rigs and how great they are to get you out there and get professional drivers are using rigs all the time just to get practice laps in.
I've seen that with the F1 drivers. That's just
Yeah,
part and parcel of what they do. They're spending time learning the tracks, learning the cars, and so on in the
yeah,
sims because they've gotten so exotic and so capable now of simulating what's really going on. Really
yeah.
impressive stuff.
So what happened? And of course I have the benefit of from your intake form. Circling back to the Accord, what happened to the Accord?
Oh man, so the Accord was with me for probably 2.5 years or so. And after I bought it, I was young and naive when I bought it, and I didn't realize the thing had been beat on pretty hard before I
Mm.
bought it. The springs had been chopped by the previous owner, so it was a lowered
Oh,
ride, and
low
that
rider.
was bad. That stressed out the axles and so on. The thing had also
Mhm.
been in some kind of a significant accident in that after I bought it, I found broken glass in the back, and I found that it had been painted. Its original color was some kind of a silver gray, and it was white when I got it on the outside. Didn't and these are things I was young and naive. I didn't
Yeah, it's
understand.
first car,
So,
right?
yeah,
Transportation.
exactly, exactly, exactly. And so one of the things that happened to me that was very dramatic, I was living in Los Angeles where I bought and was driving this car, and so the LA freeways are serious business. You merge onto the LA freeways at freeway speed or you die. Those are your choices.
Yes.
So you get to ring out a car like a little 86 Honda Accord. The thing probably had 100 horsepower. I mean, it wasn't a very heavy car, so 100 horsepower doesn't sound quite as grim as it might. But, you got to get on it. And I habitually got on it on the ramp so I could merge at some kind of a useful speed. Shifting from second to third under full throttle, whatever I was getting out of this poor little car, all of a sudden the engine just went, the tack just maxed out like, whoa, what happened? I got no power. And it wasn't the clutch. What had happened is I'd snapped the axle, shifting from
Ah,
second into third gear. And then reflecting back on it, because the car had been lowered by the person chopping the springs, that axle was just too stressed. It was not at the correct geometry that the engineers had designed for that car. And so I'm merging with traffic. Thankfully, I wasn't going from third to fourth, right? So I wasn't going that fast. I was able to get it stopped and literally pushed it backwards down the ramp back to the surface streets and to somewhere where somebody could pick the thing up and take it away for me. Got fixed. We got the proper suspension in the thing. Did a lot of maintenance work on that car to get it to be just a decent runner, just good and solid, and then the reliability that Honda at that time was known for. Not so much there. I don't think they're known for it quite so much these days, but still, if you grew up there, Honda and Toyota, those are your two brands if you wanted a really
yep,
reliable car, right?
yep.
So that car ended up towing our entire belongings in the smallest U-Haul little trailer that they would rent us because we didn't have much, young and
Mhm.
poor. And we drove that thing cross country all the way from California to New Hampshire and hauling a trailer. That car had no business having a trailer hitch installed and hauling a trailer. I don't know why.
Right.
Someone should have said something to me like, dude, you're going to trash the clutch in this thing if you do this. What are you doing? But no one said anything, and I didn't know any better. And the car was fine. I didn't destroy the
Mhm.
clutch somehow. But its underpowered nature meant as we were driving cross country, trying to get up over the Continental Divide was a thing. I remember being in Arizona
Yep.
and seeing this enormous hill in front of us on, I don't know, the I-10, I-40, whatever we were on, and just going, here we go, as hard as I could, winding this thing up and having a downshift as we're going up the hill and downshift again. It's like, I'm going to run out of gear. And then getting near the top, I'm in second gear with the thing just screaming and losing revs, but getting over the top and then dropping down the other side and like, ooh, okay, that's good. I'm glad we made that. That's good.
Yeah, this comes up often, the planning that used to be required in driving an older car, right? Whether it's going through mountains, whether it's in traffic, including a previous guest, Marla, who talked about she thinks there would be less accidents and less aggressive driving if everybody had to drive a stick shift car because the
Mm.
planning that's involved in it. Like I
Yeah.
need to rev up here, oh, I need to get around, or going up the hill, I need to downshift. Going down, I gotta get as much speed as I can because I'm gonna have to
A,
get
a
back
lot of
up.
which I'd forgotten because, man,
Yep.
I've been driving automatics for years until my current car is a stick. I'm driving a stick again after, 20, 30 years of not driving stick. And you're right. There's a different way your brain works as you're navigating, coming up on corners and negotiating a bump and coming up behind people and going through stop and go traffic, especially. It's a whole different way your brain engages to drive the vehicle for sure.
For sure, yeah, and if you 20 plus years ago, I broke my left ankle, and it put a hamper on my stick shift obsession for a while. It still hurts. I only have one stick shift. Well, I actually have two, but my daily driver is not a stick shift anymore. So
So the end of my poor Accord, Doug. I gotta tell you that
yeah,
I gotta
yeah,
bring
please,
closure to the poor vehicle because
please.
it's sad. I got it back to New Hampshire. We were living in New Hampshire, and I was driving around, going to work, doing whatever, and I stopped on Route 3, just a major state route to go in two ways, not a highway, but I was stopped to make a turn into where I was going to do some shopping, and I got rear-ended from someone who never slowed down. There were no skid marks involved. I was sitting there waiting to turn. I had just taken my foot off the brake and was about to engage the clutch to make my turn when I got hit. So thankfully, the car was able to absorb a little bit of that energy moving forward, as opposed to me being laying into the brakes at a dead
Right.
stop. So I was not hurt, but man, that car took a beating. The frame was bent, the roof wrinkled, the rear glass and the hatch had a tint on it because it came from California. Very common for these cars
Yep.
to have tinted windows.
Good
It was
observation.
as if the car moved and left the window behind. It smashed straight out and dropped to the ground in a pile held together by the tint.
Wow.
All kinds of stuff went flying around in the car and so on. And it was, yeah, I mean, the car was totaled. It was done, at that point. And I was sad because that was my
Hmm.
first car. It was still a good car and it hadn't given me any problems in snapping that axle and getting that car sorted. Since it was sorted, it was a good car and I loved it. It was my first car. It
Yeah.
wasn't super powerful, but it was fun to drive. Enjoyed it. I missed it after that, but that was the sad ending to it. I remember going to wherever the tow truck had taken it. There was some kind of a wrecker yard and looking at the car and talking about it with the insurance guy. And he's like, yeah, it's done. Look, frame spent. And he pointed the wrinkle in the roof. He's like, that's how you know. And he's like, come here. And we stood back from the car and looked at it straight on. He's like, that thing will never go down the road straight again. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was what it was.
Well, we get attached to our cars, and for people who are watching on YouTube, or if you're listening and you want to see Ethan's reaction, right? Like, I mean, truly great memories and sadness over that car.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's funny, Doug. It wasn't the fastest car. It wasn't
No.
the sexiest or the most beautiful looking car, but it was special. It was the first one I'd ever bought that was mine, not one I was borrowing from mom and dad. And it symbolized the beginning of my life just out of college, newly married, moving to California, big adventure, and to have it end ignominiously. It's just, it sucked. It was an unfortunate for what that car had been and what it
Mhm.
meant to me for it to end the way it did was like, what a crappy ending. That's too bad.
Yeah.
Oh well.
So what was the replacement for this wonderful Accord? Did it live up to the reputation of the previous car.
So you're reminding me that there's even more to the story with this Honda, Doug.
Okay.
And you
Tell
you
me
brought
more.
up Novell earlier. So before the car had been totaled, I had refinanced my Accord so that I could go to Novell school. So those of you that are listening because you're car nerds and not computer nerds, Novell was like an up and coming big technology company that a lot of us you could go to Novell school, get a certification, and that skill set was in demand. And I was
That's what I did. You too.
and me too, yeah,
Yep.
and I think we were going around the same time when it was NetWare 3. I was taking classes, but they were expensive, and I didn't have access to as much money as I needed. I'd refinanced the car,
Mhm.
and so when the car got wrecked, I was upside down on the loan that I
Right.
had on the car, and so it's like, "Oh, crap." So I got my insurance money is not gonna pay off the loan, so I had a loan I needed to pay off. I was dead broke, and I had no car, and my dad helped me out. My dad comes into the story again. I was like, "Dad, this is what's up. Need some help." He's like, "All right, we got you." And he helped me. He loaned me enough money to get the loan paid off, however much that was, probably maybe $1,000, maybe 1,500, I don't know. And then enough to buy a real beater, Doug. I mean, this is an 89-ish Ford Taurus with like 190,000 miles on it. I think it was like a
Mhm.
Gen 1 Ford Taurus.
Yeah, I think that sounds like
Um,
Gen 1.
and absolutely this car, was a New Hampshire car with 190,000 miles on it. She was not a beauty, you know what I mean?
Had a lot of rust, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it was hurting, but it was transportation. It worked. It worked, and I could get around in the thing, and over time, I was doing a little consulting because of Novell School. That turned into a consulting job not long after that. Was able to start consulting, but that car was lost reverse. That Taurus did not have reverse
Mhm.
after a while, so you learn to park in the Walmart parking lot where you can pull through.
Yep.
You don't need reverse if you can pull through and so on. But that got me through, and again, my dad entering the story was a big deal because he bailed me out, got me a car, and I paid him back, as quick as I could when I had a job. And I did have a job after getting through Novell School. It turned out Novell School was that my Honda had helped me pay for was an investment that ultimately was a gamble that paid off and sent me on a career in IT. It ended up being worth it all.
The old NetWare CNE, Certified Netware Engineer. I remember those days. Yeah. Actually that reminds me. So when I was driving the Miata all over, the company I worked for was a Novell training company and hardware and software reseller, and they did
Ditto,
work
yeah.
all over
We were
mostly
Novell Platinum, yeah.
yeah, mostly Baltimore. Actually, they have a computer museum. The place is called System Source. They're still around.
Oh,
They're in kind of northwest Baltimore, near Pennsylvania, way up there. But I was working at one of their customers, and I was on the Baltimore Beltway every day. But I was driving that Miata. I drove that car with the top down into October time, and like I
was it as fun as
loved
I
it.
think it is?
Yeah, it was fun. It was a great car. A little underpowered, but
Underpowered,
like
but light and rear-wheel drive, yeah?
rear wheel drive. I like to tell people like the convertible is the best car on a nice day. On the worst day, not so much.
There was a little supercharger kit for that car, wasn't there?
I didn't have it, but now there are supercharger kits, there are turbo kits, there are, let's see, Ford 50 swaps. Like you go down the eBay rabbit hole.
You could fit a
Which,
Ford V8 under that hood? Man, it
y-
must have been tight.
yeah, to put a bump on it. They call it the Monster Miata, but for obvious reasons.
Upset the handling a little bit, I imagine.
Yeah, you could say that. But yeah, I mean, there's professional racing leagues that are Miata
Mm.
Cup Club leagues. Yeah, Mazda really, and I've owned 4 Mazdas, so I'm a huge fan. Mazda
Okay.
builds great cars, and we're actually gonna have somebody else from Mazda on in the near future. So I'm looking forward to that. So we talked about the first couple cars, and you have a lot of stories. So I'm hoping you'll come back.
That's up to you.
I'm gonna say yes then.
Okay.
So tell us about your current fun, awesome car. Speaking of
Yeah.
tuner and doing
Yeah, yeah.
mods, and we talked about it a little bit in passing, and
Mhm.
it has a very strong following, these cars, very strong.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll set it up by saying I got into Subarus around
Mhm.
2010. My wife needed a new car, and we were tired of fighting the snow that we got to deal with up here and just dealing
Mhm.
with the headaches of driving in the snow. And I wanted something better for her to be driving around in. And we got her an Outback. And I
Mhm.
saw her. I remember her looking out the window as she drove up with the kids heading off to school, taking them to school. One of the first days we had it on a slippery, nasty day. And the car just drove like there was nothing wrong whatsoever, like it was dry pavement. I was in awe. And I fell in love with Subaru at that very moment because we'd heard about how wonderful Subarus were in the New Hampshire winters. And that just seeing that moment, knowing the previous car she had in on a day like that, that previous car would have spun the tires and fought and been a thing and then drama to see if you could actually crest the little hill we lived on and then get on the flats and be on your way. Not the Subaru. I got into Subarus and Subaru culture at that point, and I had wanted forever to buy a WRX, just had wanted it, but they were always a bit out of reach and not practical. And for a lot of years, I was needing to be kind of practical about cars and just couldn't quite get there. But now at December last year, so actually New Year's Day, I picked this car up, a 2011 WRX in the classic, iconic World Rally Blue hatchback. I'm all about the hatchbacks. I love the hatchback body style. Every Subaru we've had has been a hatchback in some form or another. And this Rex is a dream come true. I found it largely unmodified. They're difficult to find unmodified because they're a reasonably affordable car, and a lot of young guys will buy them and mod the crap out of them and beat them to death. They don't take care of them a lot of times.
No.
And so if you buy one that's modded, that's a risk. You don't know really what you're getting into. If you can find one that's largely unmodified, it's rare. But if you can, and it's been taken care of, that's a special car. And I found it. That car's my baby. I love this thing. So I bought it on Cars and Bids, Doug DeMuro's site, the Doug DeMuro's auction site. Been watching auctions kind of idly because everybody watches. If you're a car guy, you watch Doug. We all know Doug. Watching him.
I know Doug very well.
Right? So
yeah. I love his name too.
Yeah, of course you do. And so this car comes up on Cars and Bids, and I was not thinking about it too seriously, but kind of looking at it like, oh wow, what a nice car, but more admiring it rather than thinking I'm going to buy it. But then my son calls me. My son had been driving his grandfather, my father's Taurus SHO, a 2013 SHO for some years. He bought it from his grandfather, who was moving out of that car and bought something else. And so my son bought it.
Was that the V8 SHO?
It's a twin turbo V6.
Oh, okay.
So it's the Ecotec V6 in that SHO. I don't think that ever had a V8.
I can't remember. They did something unique for a certain time, but that was towards the end of the SHO.
This was right. You're in the latest body style Taurus. Fairly big car, but all-wheel drive, tons of power, 360 horse, I think. I mean, you stood on that thing and you knew something was about to happen. It was for real. A fast car, a lot of car. But my son, being a young man, was just struggling to keep the thing on the road. He put 50-something thousand miles on it, but as it got into six figures on the odometer, and it was, I don't know, it had 110-something thousand, just various things were starting to go wrong with it, and the car became too expensive for him to maintain. And long story short, what we decided to do was my son was going to drive one of my Subarus, and I was going to buy this WRX was the plan. But of course, I got to win the auction. So it's an auction car on Cars and Bids on Doug DeMuro's site. Okay, here we go. And long story short, I won the auction. But it was one of those auctions, the way Cars and Bids works, you have to have no bids for 60 seconds after the auction closes. If someone bids, then it runs for another 60 seconds and keeps going until there's no more bids. And then finally the auction will close. And as long as you meet the reserve price, you're good to go. And it was like that. My son's watching in real time. He's on a call with my wife, who's looking over my shoulder, and I'm sitting here. I'm bidding. It's me and another guy going back and forth. And I'm like, stop bidding. Stop it. Stop. Just no, this is my car. It was a little irrational at that point, but won the car at a price that I'm not too embarrassed about, but I got it for 18 when it was all said and done, plus fees, plus whatever. But here's the thing. I live in New Hampshire, and that car was in Cali. So it's all the way out on the West Coast. So it couldn't have been much further away from me. But I talked to the guy, and I could have had it shipped, and I thought about it, but I talked to him, and I'm like, well, could I drive this car back? Would this car make it back across the country? He's like, oh yeah, I'd drive it back. No worries. I've been taking care of it. And he had all the Carfax records showed it had been a very well-maintained car and it had nothing wrong with it. And so that's what happened. That's what I did. With my son. So my son and I made a big important memory in this car together. He was right there all the way, needing a car and was going to drive one of my other cars and knew what this car was. He himself, one of his cars in his history, he had tuned his own. He had a 2015 VW GTI that he tuned and done a lot of things to. And he knew what this WRX was. He was into it. And I'm like, well, can you fly to Cali with me and let's drive this car back across the country together? And he's like, yeah, and I can do it. Let's, and we figured out his window to get off work. And that's exactly what we did. We flew out of Boston all the way to San Fran and then down the coast to a little San Luis Obispo airport, met the guy at the airport with the car. We shook hands, did what needed to be doing with paperwork and stuff. There wasn't much. Cars and Bids takes care of pretty much everything. I put my temp in the hatch and drove away. And I'm trying to remember how to drive a stick again. So it had been a minute. And we drove all the way back across the country in the Rex, baby blue. In 4 days, we drove Arizona up through Oklahoma and Missouri and all the way across and finally ended up back in New Hampshire after 4 days. And that car we paid attention to tire pressure and that was it. I mean, we were paying attention, we were being adults staring obsessively at the water temp gauge and other things, but it gave us no trouble at all and got it all the way home in one piece. And what a joy driving that thing. It came from the factory with a short throw shifter kit. Okay. That was a factory option. I actually went on eBay and I got the original dealer catalog that showed you all the options for the Rex at that time. But short throw shifter from the factory and a catback exhaust from the factory as well, which doesn't change the power much, but does give you that notable boxer burble because that car's got unequal length headers. That's the standard Subaru config. Not great for speed, but incredible for sound. I mean, that's iconic boxer, Subi boxer rumble. That thing sounds amazing with that catback exhaust. Not this bassy, it sounds so good.
Yeah.
And what a joy, man. I love that car and I've had the car. I'm chucking your ear off right now, but this has been.
Well, I'm thinking about, we talked a little bit about it and it reminds me of, I'm going to quote your favorite episode from our podcast, which was the episode with Neil and Rushin they wrote a book called The Console Clunker. They live not too far from you, where they rebuilt a 1998 Acura Integra and drove across country in it. And then they did the same thing with the Alfa Romeo Spider, I think. Something similar.
Yeah,
they brought them
Integra,
closer together.
Teggy, and it was it's a great story. It was a great story.
It is a great story, and just doing that with your son, and you're lighting up talking about your son, but you're lighting up about the car too, and all the facts and the Subaru book for that year.
When you're younger and for whatever reason, you can't buy that car, whatever the car is you're looking at in the magazine or reading about, or you see someone else driving on the road. And then finally you get it and it's the one you want. It's the one you've been looking at. It's the one that turns your head every time it goes by the other direction. Go, get that thing. Now you have one. And I have one. And it's a good example. And it's a Cali car, so it's in New Hampshire, but it's not all rusted to death, And I get it home and I say I've been modding it, but it's all been very careful, tasteful things. I'm not touching the drivetrain. Drivetrain is being left alone, but I'm doing things to update the car. So I had the entire interior out except for the dashboard to put a stereo in it. I put sound deadening in it and I got a subwoofer in it and put a head unit and an amp in it and did all the wiring. That's all stuff I know how to do, but I did it, very carefully, all very meticulous. I ordered the JDM panel that fits around the double DIN opening correctly. If you have the USDN one, it's wide. It's a little wide because of what the factory head units, they were not double DIN standard. So you have to go to the JDM parts bin to get the panel that actually fits correctly around a double DIN aftermarket head unit. And I found one. It took me 3 orders to get the right one. The two that I'd ordered were wrong. They showed up supposedly being the correct part. No, they were not right. And it took me 3 tries to actually get the right part. So I have 2 Subaru Impreza WRX model 2011 dash panels. If anyone's looking for one, maybe I'll put them up on eBay.
Okay.
That aren't the right thing.
We'll definitely referencing them on our show in the show notes to help you out there. We all end up with extra parts that way. It's kind of the rabbit hole of this looks like the right thing. I'm going to pull the trigger. It shows up.
Yeah, no, but I've been having fun doing things like that. So
Yeah,
this car was
I can
a
tell.
limited, and well, the STI side mirrors have marker lights, and the stock WRX, because there's the WRX and then there's the STI trim, which is a cut above. It's
Mhm.
more of it's got a very different drivetrain in it, and it's got a somewhat different motor in it, and so on. It's not the one I was looking for because they ride really rough, and in New Hampshire
Right.
the roads are really rough, and so you don't want a rough riding car, and so I wanted the Rex, not the WRX STI, but the STI did have some nice perks, and one of them was
Mhm.
just a thing like those side marker mirrors. Well, I found a set of them on eBay, bought them in, put them on the car. They look great, and now I've got side marker lights
Mhm.
on my mirrors. That's a nice little thing, little upgrades like that. I'm doing that are I would call it OEM plus is the way I'm trying to do my
I like that.
modifications.
Plus, I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So what is next for the Rex?
Next for the Rex, I have skid plates to install. So I am a hiker and a trail runner, and I go down forest roads to get to trailheads so I can get up into the mountains. So a skid plate seems like a really smart thing to do on
Yes.
this low riding car. Those are here. I got them from Primitive Racing. They're sitting in their box waiting for me. That's coming. I have headlights on order from Morimoto. Morimoto is a company that makes a lot of aftermarket headlamp and tail lamp assemblies for a whole bunch of different cars. And one of the things that lets the stock Rex down that I have, this is model year 2011, is the lights. Modern lights are awesome. They're bright and white and LED and so on. And the old halogens just don't cut the mustard by comparison. But Morimoto makes some aftermarket upgrades for the car, and I've got them. I pulled the trigger on them last night because I've been waiting for. They're expensive. It's expensive.
Mhm.
I'm finally like, okay, let's go. And I click the button, and they're coming. So things like that are modernizing the car. I feel like a boy racer when I say this, but I'm doing the hella horn upgrades because you got to do that
Okay.
on your Subaru. You have to. So I've got them sitting in the box, and so there's a day coming because I got to take the front bumper off for all of these things. The front bumper's coming off. I'm going to do the skid plate. I'm going to do the headlights. I'm going to do the hella horn install, and that's going to be a fun day. That's coming. See if I can get my
Okay.
son up to help me with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll take pictures and post some videos for us. That would be cool to hear. And we were talking about things from the past, and you mentioned headlights, and having two old cars, the 1990Z and the 81 DeLorean. Like, and I don't know, maybe that's just the way it was back then. Maybe they're just old. I don't know. I can't imagine how safe that could have been in
But I don't
1981 or
what's weird is I
1990.
don't remember them. I mean, I drove plenty of cars at night as a kid. I
Yeah.
don't remember that lighting being a problem. I guess we're spoiled in the modern era. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. So I think you have one of your dream cars, but what would be your dream car if, money weren't an issue, time, garage space, you had a
I mean,
chauffeur, all that good stuff?
That that's a long list. I'll
Okay.
stick to what I sent you
Yeah,
just
please.
to have a starting point. But
Yeah, we'll
one
start there.
car that I adored the look of when I was a kid, going through magazines was the Porsche 930, technically the 911 slant nose with the whale tail on it, that big old tail. The lines of that car, something about it just captivated me. I love that thing. Such a handsome car that was distinct from the traditional 911 nose. With that's iconic. Everyone knows what that car looks like, but the slant nose with the pop-up headlights and the whale tail was something special to me. I was obsessed with the look of that thing. And every time it popped up in a magazine, they were doing a test on, I was like, love it. Look at it. And Cias have captured my attention over the years as well. And the Stratos, which is kind of the wedge with the rounded big haunches on it and kind of the round tail lamps, if you can remember what that thing looks like, at the louvered hood. Really interesting, handsome, fascinating car. And I don't know how it was a rally car. So I mean, I'm sure
Yeah,
it
those are
could
rally
scoot,
cars. Yeah.
but so I don't technically know how fast it was, but boy, it looked fast. That's for sure. What
Yeah.
a thing. And there's a resto mod version of that car these days, I think, too. I forget who's making it, but it's modeled after that. That, and I think
Oh,
there's the
oh wow.
Lancia. Oh, I'm gonna get the model name wrong, but the Stradale, but it was more of a traditional hatchback kind of a shape. There we go. That's the
Mhm.
model I'm thinking of. Was right in there too. Interesting cars. But I would come back to a variety of Porsches over time. When I was 9 years old, I had to do a research paper in school about something. That was the thing they were teaching us how to do. And I
Mhm.
had a big coffee table style book about Porsche. Porsche, A Tradition of Greatness is what I believe the title of this car was, that covered Porsche's history up through I mean, I was a kid, so it couldn't have been much more than the early 80s. And I just ate up everything Porsche because of that book and studying that book till I could write this research paper as a little kid. And man, I still remember images of the Porsche 928 S4, and it had this checkerboard patterned interior and all this
Yeah,
stuff. And I
the
guess,
Pasha interior, that's what they call it.
was that what it was?
Yeah,
Okay.
Pasha, I think. Interior.
Man.
Yeah.
So now I, as an adult, met someone that owned a 928 and said, "You don't want to own one of these. They're a nightmare to keep on the road. They're so expensive to maintain."
Yeah.
And but still cool looking. I want to go for a ride in one. I don't think I want to own one, but
Yeah, I think I drove one once just for the heck of it. I don't know why somebody would have let me drive one when I was, 18 or whatever. And I remember the gas pedal getting stuck down, and there were all these warning lights. But man, that V8, and it's funny you mentioned 928 because I was watching part of Risky Business last night because
yeah,
my best friend and co-founder of the podcast, Christian, loves the 928 and he loves
yeah.
that movie. So I was just watching it. It is such an amazing car, but the 944s get more attention in the market than 928s.
And I
928,
think there's more of them around. I mean, it was
yeah,
just it was a more affordable car. Yeah, how many of them are in good running order? I don't know, but yeah, I tend to see more 944s than 928s come up
yeah,
for auction, yeah, and out there. But yeah, a lot of Porsches. I'd love
yeah,
to own a V8 American muscle car at some point.
yeah.
That's pretty interesting to me.
The
Mustang.
Mustang,
Yeah,
yeah,
I grew up in a Ford family, and so a lot.
okay,
My dad was not exclusively Fords, but he did have a lot of Fords, and so I was pretty fascinated by Mustangs for a lot of years. But man, the like my dream, Mustang would be let's say a late 80s
hmm
notchback, or sorry, that would have been an LX, I think,
that
but
would have
it
been
had the
LX
50 in it.
5.0.
But the notchback, hard that car, not the with all the louvers over the tail lights and all that.
Louvers got
Yeah,
side skirts, yeah,
need the
5.0
clean.
lightweight,
Mm,
yeah,
yeah, but when those come up
hmm
for auction, they go for a lot because it's people like you and me with some money that finally
yep.
decide they're gonna have one and go and
Well,
rack up the
it
price.
And it's funny you say that because, of course, I can just pick out car stuff from my day-to-day life, but the new Nissan apparently has been doing really well, and why are they doing it? Retirees are buying those cars, and that's what's keeping it alive, and I'm like, "That could be me and you,
Yeah,
not
yeah, yeah,
in the
us
near
old guys.
future, right? Would I want one?
Yeah.
I don't know. I still wanna get my Z back on the road. It's just,
So, throw another car at you, and then I
yeah,
gotta ask you a
please,
question.
please.
So I don't know exactly what year it would be, but it would be a Vet with a split window rear is such a gorgeous thing
Yeah,
to me.
1963 only.
So beautiful, that car,
Yep.
right? What do you think of the C8 Corvette looking at it?
God, I know so many people that have them, including I have a friend who has a C8 and a DeLorean with LS motor and a bunch of other Corvettes. I'm going to use his term because he was in Italy and he got to drive a Ferrari. Obviously, he's a car guy. He's like, this is
Mhm.
the American Ferrari. I don't know. The engine lid, I'm not like engine cover, I'm not a fan of. I think it's just something about that just kind of throws me off and makes me lose interest. It is apparently maybe not the answer you wanted to hear. It it is like the car to have. Like for the money, you cannot beat that car at track events. Actually, I'm going to a track event in April in Richmond with the Extreme Experience. Actually, we had this
Mhm.
plug. We had their CEO on our podcast too.
Okay.
So they bring supercars to tracks and you get to drive them depending on how much. But he said the C8 Z06, he said that is amongst their most popular car. It's not
Yeah.
the Lamborghini, it's not the Ferrari, it's that car because it's reasonable.
I asked the question, not
Yes.
because I don't think the C8 Vet is a heck of a car. It is in all its flavors. Whether it's the Z06, and I forget all the new letter designations, but they keep
Zero one
coming up on
zero
YouTube.
one is, and they just came out in the 01F.
Yeah, I knew there was an X involved somewhere,
Yeah,
yeah, that I
yeah,
just
that
saw,
just
and
came
these
out.
cars are astonishing with what their performance is and their capabilities, and it's all that. It's a heck of a car. But I look at it and I compare it to the shapes of a C6 or a C7, let's say, and if looks were the only consideration, I will have a front engine Vet C6 or C7 all day over a C8. I don't like
Mhm.
looking at the C8, and I feel like I shouldn't be saying that, but that's how I feel about it. It looks wrong to me, and I can't get my head around what it
Huh.
is. Part of it is
Yeah,
the engine cover and the lines, and it's very busy, and it looks disproportionate somehow to me.
yeah. It kind of looks a little like a Batmobile somehow, like a
Yeah.
later Batmobile.
Yeah, I know exactly why you say that. Yeah.
Well, and it's funny if you want to see something happen to a vet. If you've heard of Whistling Diesel on YouTube,
Oh, who hasn't heard of Whistling
he just
Diesels? Yeah.
recently destroyed a C8, so it's probably worth watching
To
if you're
find
looking
out. He was in
fun.
prison and for some games he was playing with license plates in the state of Montana. Anyway.
The old Montana loophole.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
can't
yeah.
go to a car show without seeing a few cars with Montana plates. True story.
Oh,
But yeah, the Corvette, I think the thing for me is they're a dime a dozen. And I mean, you might see more of those than you see of your Subaru, to be honest.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so but it's an incredible car. In my case, I would want a C5 only because of the pop up headlights. Like, not
Okay.
the only reason, but like
No,
that's
I feel that. Yeah.
ties me back. But so, man, we talked about so many cars, and I have more questions for you if you have a couple more minutes for us, Ethan.
I do. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, one of the questions we like to ask on the podcast is, what is the most dangerous car that you've been in, you've driven, or you were a passenger in? And you're smiling. I know the story, but I haven't heard you tell it.
So I was in okay, so I'm gonna describe this more as a dangerous situation that scared me as opposed to the car
Mm,
itself was dangerous, 'cause I don't think the car itself was dangerous, but it was so I'd mentioned my son's 2015 VW GTI. And that car as is very, very small. You ever been in a GTI? You ever been in one of
yeah,
them?
yeah,
So you know how
yeah.
tiny that thing is, right? You know, you turn around and your elbow's gonna hit the rear glass. Okay, it's not that bad, but it's it's a small car.
Yeah, a small car with a back seat, for
And
sure.
it's a stick. It's definitely an enthusiast car. It's a lot of fun to drive. And my son and I bought this car together. This was his first car, and it was a stick. And he was determined to learn how to drive a stick. And I really wanted him to have the knowledge of a kid growing up in in the modern era where everything's an automatic or paddle shifters or whatever, to actually know how to drive a proper stick with a clutch. And he'd be one of the
Mm.
few people in the world that you could do it at this point. Hardly anybody knows how anymore. And he got it. He got good and he could drive that car. And then he got into modding. There's a big modding scene around the GTI.
Yeah, there
For
is.
sure. So
Ships
he'd
are an
go to
easy way
work
to
and
start.
he got a Cobb tuner and he got a tune put on this thing and he got an exhaust, a really obnoxiously lost, but he loved it. And this car got fast. I don't it was never dynoed. We don't know exactly, but gotta guess this car was getting near 300 horse engine. I don't think
Mhm.
wheel, but it was getting up there because you
Yeah.
can go a long way with just a Cobb and a tune, pump gas and a catback. You can make some pretty good power in that car. And man, on the road after he'd gotten his latest tune done, and we were on a back road, we weren't on the highway, and he got on it and it scared the crap out of me, not gonna lie. Was it dangerous? Did we almost have an accident? No, but I was petrified of this car, this monster my son had created in this thing. It was fun, but it scared me. Yeah. In another moment in that same car, he was driving and I was in the car too. Yeah, the three of us were definitely in the car while someone pulled up next to him and on the highway, this is on the interstate, and they got the nod, and it was the 3, 2, 1, and they took
Mhm.
off, the pair of them, and I'm just along for the ride going, "This is happening. Okay, here we go." And it didn't last long, they were showing off, young men demonstrating how much power they got under the hood. And again, nothing bad happened. There was no accident and no close calls or anything, but that
Mhm.
car to me was dangerous because it was so small and so fast, and it's the kind of car, if you get into a bad accident, they just bury you in the car. That would be the most convenient way to deal with you at
Yeah.
that. Oh.
Does he still have the car?
We had to sell that car. He put a ton of miles on it, and it outgrew its useful life,
Mhm.
required tons and tons of maintenance and money, and after that car is when he bought my father, his grandfather's Taurus SHO, and which became his
Okay.
next daily, yeah, after that. So we sold the GTI, yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. And he still has the SHA?
The SHO is what just died at the end of
Okay.
last year, and that became too much money to maintain when it developed a significant oil leak. It was something wrong with one of the turbos in that engine, and it was into 4,000 something. Fixable, not
Mhm.
fixable when you're a broke college student working
Right.
on what's next in your life. So he
Right.
needs something with less maintenance. So he's driving one of Dad's cars right now, one of my
Okay.
Subies.
Okay. All right. Well, we know that's safe and Not too fast as long
as long as it's not the Rex.
Right.
I mean, the car he's driving is still a turbocharged Subaru that can get out of its own way, but it's got all the nannies, all the electronic, modern tech stuff on it that doesn't let you have too much fun.
Yeah. Well, you did things in a roundabout sort of way with your son. You got him the super fast car to make him hopefully appreciate power, right?
He does. And now that he's older, he also appreciates the practicality of a car and being comfortable in a car when you have to go long distances and all that. He's actually a fun car.
Dad's got the cool car. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. So what is your favorite car movie or TV show, Ethan?
So there's a few different memories here. When I was a kid, do you remember a show that was only on briefly, but it was called Automan?
I do. It had Desi Arnaz Jr. in it.
So Automan is just on my memory because they used special effects and so on. And this car it was an imaginary car. I don't know what the thing was actually based on, but it had, it glowed and special effects that made it look like it was very fast and on the road and stuff. So that's kind of a weird one, but I just wondered if you too remembered that because it really made an impression on me as a little kid.
I think it was one season, and you remember the car, what created it was called Cursor.
Yes, right. Cursor would draw the thing. And other stuff too that would come to life.
Back to our IT fun. That actually, my former co-host Christian, he loves that show too. So it's got to be so bad to watch now. But yeah, I do wonder what kind of car that was. I always considered that movie. I think it came out that show right around the same time Tron. There was some
Cursor and all that.
To
You're a bit, they would say in Tron, and Cursor was kind of that same sort of creation.
Exactly. Yeah, that's fun.
So another car movie is Smokey and the Bandit, of course, the first one. The second one's kind of forgettable, but the first one was a lot of fun. And that's another one of those cars, that black Trans Am that he's driving, which is actually not that fast and not that powerful, but the way they filmed it, made it look that way. And my favorite scene from that movie is the convoy scene where he needs to hide. He's got someone chasing him down and he tucks in between these semis that are riding in a convoy. And then the other semi pulls out and pushes the cop out of the way and then screens him so he can hide effectively. What a fun scene. Just a great scene. A movie I just watched recently that's in the YouTube catalog. YouTube's got a whole movies series that they run a whole bunch of different movies through there. And the Gumball Rally shows up from
the Gumball
late 70s, early 80s. I don't remember exactly what year that came out, but there's a bunch of neat cars in there, Ferraris and Porsches, and just a mix and match of a variety of interesting cars and drivers that have backstories if you start digging around on the internet about it. That's a fun movie.
I've got a movie for you that it will tie back to your love for Porsches. No Man's Land with Charlie Sheen. Have you seen it?
No, I don't think so.
You've got to watch it. It's Charlie Sheen and D.B. Sweeney, and Charlie Sheen steals Porsches. That's like what he does. He has a Porsche shop, which is like a front for him stealing Porsches. And D.B. Sweeney is an undercover cop, and probably not the best movie, but there's some great chase scenes. And scenes with 911 going around some crazy hairpin turns, and as you know, the weight in the back, right? It's
the Widowmaker,
the Widowmaker, exactly.
Trouble. So some other cars, other movies you brought to my mind. Again, maybe not the greatest movie in the world, but let me back up a step. Steve McQueen, Bullet, great movie, great, that iconic car scene in the San Francisco hills and all that at the end with the Bullet Mustang. What a great. Just an iconic, memorable scene. But then fast forward to the remake of Gone in 60 Seconds with Nicolas Cage was in that, Angelina Jolie was in that, and I forget a bunch of other cast of characters. The whole thing is about them boosting cars and moving them on, and then Eleanor, his white whale, the one he could never quite steal, and package up without things happening. That is a fun movie. And Eleanor in that movie was a beautiful, beautiful car. Just the look at that thing was great. And I know it's a remake. I don't think I've ever seen the original Gone in 60 Seconds. I'm interested in seeing it, but I have not.
I have not either. So since you said the Eleanor, the one that got away, what is your car that got away? What's your Eleanor? I know we talked about your dream cars, but it would have to be a car that you've owned. What's your Eleanor?
Well, I can tell you about a car that broke my heart. This was when the TL was like written up in all the magazines as like this is the one, man. This car is great. Acura nailed it. They got it just right. I think I had it as, I think it was a 2006 that I had, because I remember that the 2008 edition of that car had some taillights I liked so much better than my 2006, and I was jealous, if I remember right. Anyway, this car was Acura, of course, Honda's premium brand, and at that time, Acura was ruling the world. They were knocking it out of the park with so many cars. They'd come on the scene, I don't know, 15 years earlier with the Legend, 20 years earlier with the Legend. And everybody just knew the Acura mark and held it in the highest regard. And man, if you drove an Acura, that was the thing. And I had this opportunity to buy a TL. It was used, but I loved that thing. It was blue, it had a saddle interior, beige leather. I don't remember, perforated leather seats. Came with a nav system, which back at the day, well, that was kind of a big deal. You didn't have CarPlay. And so to have a car with a built-in nav was kind of awesome. Had a really nice stereo in the thing, and the engine just got up and went 260 something horse, I think, if I remember right, and lots of power. It had a lot of aluminum in it, so the thing was light. You got under it, part of the chassis was aluminum and part of the engine was aluminum. And it was just like, it felt like driving an exotic to me. I drove a lot of Ford Tauruses, man. Those were not exciting cars. They got you from point A to point B, but they weren't exciting.
A lot of plastic. Yeah, a lot of plastic in those cars.
Well, the TL was a step up.
Cave-in. Yeah, TL. I remember a friend of mine when I worked at a company that begins with a C. He got one. I just remember it took voice commands. I'm like, show me how it works.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, passenger heat, seat heat, turn on. And that was it. I was like, oh, that's maybe not that exciting.
And it didn't understand you about half the time anyway.
Yeah.
But the car broke my heart because this was my daily, and I drove the family around it. I had 2 little kids at the time, and coming home from church one morning with all the kids dressed up and and so on, and the car overheats bad, and we're almost home, but the car is like making bad noises and doing bad things, and I'm like, this isn't happening. This is a Honda, basically. This is like supposed to be the most reliable car in the world, and it's my baby, and I love this car, and this isn't happening, and I'm in denial as this is going on. Long story short is the car overheated badly. I think it was it had like a fancy thermostat. It wasn't just a simple bimetal, thermostat that would open when the temps got hot enough. It was something electronically controlled, and something failed. And that thermostat got shut, caused the car to overheat, and it had issues and other sorts of problems because it had overheated, and whatever got warped. It was just never quite right. It was drivable, but never right. And I never trusted it again. And every time I had to take it in for service to the dealer, there was only one Acura dealer around, and I brought it in there, and they'd give me a loaner, and I'd go to work, and it was a bit of pain in the butt forever after, until I traded it in on, I think I traded that car in on my first Subaru, actually, on the first Subaru that I bought. My wife had bought one, but then I bought one after because I was so impressed with what she was driving. And I think I traded in the TL to get that first Subaru, which was 2012 Impreza hatch, not the WRX, but the first year of the next generation of the Impreza, which I think was a Gen 4 at that point. Anyway.
Okay.
So the TL,
not
exactly the one that got away, but the one that I had the highest expectations for and killed me because of some crappy part that basically wrecked the motor.
Yeah.
Now we're Subaru family. Got all Subarus. I've had Imprezas. I had a Forester XT for a while that we drove very high miles, and the engine eventually blew. Kind of a known problem with the banjo bolts. Decided to not put another engine in it. Had a Crosstrek. Had multiple Outback. Now I've got 2 Outback Wildernesses, 2022s.
Oh, wow.
And the Rex, 2011 WRX hatch. So I don't know how many total Subarus I've had. I have to think about it, but a bunch.
A lot. Yeah. Definitely a Subaru family. So I want to shift to the trivia question and answer. So what was the device created for cars, and it's present in every modern day car? I can't think of a single one that was created by a blind person.
Got me, man. I do not know.
So the gentleman's name was Ralph Tidor. He was an engineer who lost his sight at age 5, and he invented what was called the speedostat, later renamed cruise control in 1940. And the invention came from the fact that he was frustrated in riding with his lawyer. They would talk, and the lawyer was slowing down, speeding up. And I think it just kind of made him feel a little sick. And so he went home and engineered this creation, and we have him to thank for it. Isn't that amazing?
I love that
Where
story.
ingenuity comes from. And
Yeah.
I have to plug, we have so many, I feel like I'm bragging, but we have so many great episodes, and we talked about a bunch of them. I don't know if you've heard the episode with Dr. Robert Kearns, or his son, Timothy Kearns, who lives nearby. His dad created the intermittent windshield wiper. In Detroit, it was kind of stolen by the big three. It was the longest case of patent infringement running for over 30 years. The children were involved in it, and there was a movie about it, which Tim is very proud of the movie. I think it's a fantastic family movie, and for car enthusiasts, it's called, let's see, what is it called? It is called Flash of Genius with Greg Kinnear, who's a famous actor. So highly recommend watching the movie. Tim is portrayed by a kid with a blue shirt. His older brother, who actually just recently passed away, Dennis, is involved, and the family helped the father go to court, and the father was very, driven, and he could have had, I don't know, $30 million from Ford, and he said no, and he took it to court, and he won. He probably got less money, but he was idealistic, and
he was righteous in his indignation and wanted justice served. Yeah, well done for him.
And it's a great story, and just having met Tim, who also owns a Porsche, by the way, that he races. I live in Maryland, in Annapolis, which is the state capital, and he lives on the eastern shore, what we call the other side of Maryland, where you have to go over the large Chesapeake Bay Bridge. But yeah, having met Tim in person and just hearing the story, and I watched the movie with my kids, is a wonderful tale. So just made me think of him. So yeah, if people want to find you, Ethan, I mean, you're all over. Anything with networking, Packet Pushers Network pops up. But if you want to find Ethan, you can find him on his website, the company website, packetpushers.net. You can find him on their YouTube channel, Packet Pushers Network. And of course, anywhere you get podcasts, there are a total of 13 different podcasts on your
13 active shows we've got now, and some other miscellaneous feeds. But there's lots and lots of Packet Pushers content out there, lots of pods, and I'm on 3 of them.
No, hear your voice often, and I see your LinkedIn, and I'm glad to have another car guy, same age, who's also into tech, and who's got great stories. So
thank you for inviting me. This is a lot of fun, Doug.
That's fun. Yeah, love to have you back. You have more stories. Love to have your son or your wife on, your colleagues, friends, anyone. So looking forward to getting this out. And as we gently steer the podcast into pit lane, I want to thank Ethan Banks for being on the show. Again, it's been an honor. Having listened to your show for 15 years, and I think really it was the first podcast of its type to go out there and talk about computer networks. And, and you guys continue to impress, and all the different podcasts that have spawned from it, and the events, Network Field Day, and all those other things.
Well, we didn't start Network Field Day, but we certainly were a part of it back in the beginning.
And still are. Yeah, and just haven't seen the podcast grow. And then, this is fantastic. So, you have just heard the high-revving, low-mileage, late model, heard round the world, authoritative podcast on automotive nostalgia. And if you have a great story to share, or have a friend who has a great story, please drop us a line. And we're active on all the social media, including LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. But the easiest way to find all our content is to go to our Linktree, linktr.ee/carslove, or drop us a note, send us a story, refer a friend, stories@carslove.com, and we'll see you next time.